Yes, Jason Weigandt here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's where I normally at some point say to like and subscribe, but there wasn't much liking to last week's video, which was titled, appropriately, apparently, Lunatic Ideas to Slow Down 450s in Supercross. 60,000 views, 900 comments as of the time I'm recording this, and the overwhelming majority of those comments, I'd say, rough estimate, 898 of the 900 comments, brutally negative. You either don't like the idea of slowing the bikes down at all, or think my ideas to slow the bikes down are completely, well, lunatic. And that's fine. This is going to be a strange corner of the internet, a strange YouTube video, something on social media where you're allowed to disagree. I don't care. I'm not saying I've got the perfect answers. I do just want to make this one point clear, and then we can agree to disagree. I was not advocating for a way to tighten the racing, to penalize someone who's winning, to hand out participation trophies. My only goal is to try to reduce the severity of the crashes when they happen. I don't know if we can reduce the amount of crashing. I'm just trying to reduce the severity of when it goes wrong. Remember when motocross, you just had broken wrists and ankles and collarbones and arms, and we just accepted that as part of the deal? It's the super duper catastrophic injuries that happen at the highest speeds on the biggest jumps often that are the most worrisome. So all I'm trying to do is have a rider case a 60-foot jump instead of an 80-foot jump, or crash at 35 miles an hour instead of 40, because the percentages and the impacts are going to go down at that point. That's all I was trying to do. Eli Tomac, if you want to triple where everybody else doubles and you want to dominate a main event, go have it. Because if you don't, someone else is going to do that too. Wasn't trying to take that away. Yep, 60,000 views on that video. Oddly though, if you look by that dislikes area, you'll see the date on that video. Was that on purpose? I guess we'll never know. Let's move on to this week's topic. The hot news last week. Steve Matthes, love him or hate him, did break the story that Christian Craig is going to sign a 2-year 450 full-time deal with Rockstar Energy Husqvarna. So he's going to be another addition to that team along with Malcolm Stewart, who already has a 2-year deal, so he'll definitely be back next year. Dean Wilson's status is always up in the air until it seems like November or so, and then Husky brings him back. And a lot of this is timing. That team was supposed to have Zach Osborne on board. He retired, which they didn't expect to have happen, so that has led to an opening, and that's what Craig was able to capitalize on. And credit to him and his management team. This is when his stock is at its highest, so they are capitalizing on it. And that's what I'm doing. With my sponsor, I got anti-gravity batteries. I got a couple of them here. This one is super lightweight, even lighter than the one that came stock in your bike. This one is about the same size and weight as your stock battery, but it has more than twice the cranking power. In fact, you could actually jumpstart your truck with this battery. So if you want to start your bike quickly in gear, or maybe you're an off-road racer and you're fighting your way through a mud battle and you got to start the bike over and over and over, this 801 is the battery for you. If you're a super hardcore racer, go with the extra lightweight. Thanks to anti-gravity batteries. Go to antigravitybatteries.com to learn more about them. So good job by Craig and his management team to capitalize on something that he's always wanted, which is to race 450 Supercross. He's actually done 450 outdoors a lot. But he and other veterans like Jeremy Martin have always said how badly they want to get a 450 ride, and that becomes the topic of this video. How the rules work, and in my opinion, how difficult it is to make a perfect set of 250 Supercross rules to force riders to graduate up. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Now, it's easy to tee off on this, and it happened early in the year when Craig started winning races and fans started pointing out how is a 30-year-old winning races in the 250 class. And isn't it unfair for riders like Michael Mosiman and Hunter Lawrence, who are learning, they're second, third, fourth year guys, and they're trying to beat this guy to win a title, and he's had 12 years to figure it out? Now look, that's not untrue. But how can you make a rule that will perfectly address all the varying situations? The rule makers from the AMA have to walk this very fine line. They want to have 250 rules to allow riders to develop. They want to force talent eventually into the 450 class so the best of the best race each other. But at the same time, they don't want to be perceived as those that are cutting off the knees of their own athletes. Now, it would be a lot easier to make a perfect rule if the 450 class was this cornucopia, this buffet, this massive group of 30 or 40 riders making a living, making it happen, having something they can pitch to potential sponsors. But as I covered in a video earlier this year, that's not the case. We started this year with 4 winners in the 450 class in the first 4 races. And I said there was going to be only 5 this year, so that was absolutely in jeopardy, but here we are. We still only have 4 winners. We have only 4 winners this year. That is how steep and peaked the point at the top of this field is. And this is in an era with a lot more parity than before. Heck, we think all these riders are injured, but I'm going to look at the point standings right now. There are 7 healthy riders that could potentially win this upcoming weekend. Sexton, Weigandt, Webb, Stewart, Barsha, Anderson, Tomac. We're in an era of great parity, and there still doesn't end up being that much parity. So you have to be careful when you're forcing these 250 riders up, because inevitably someone's going to finish between 12th and 14th. And the way this sport works, although it has gotten better, it is really hard to pitch yourself and make a lot of money and get on a good team with good bikes and a good trainer and have the money to invest in a track and training and all the things you need to do it right when you're saying, hey, I'm going to be a 12th to 14th place guy. Now, in other sports, if you're a 12th to 14th place guy, you're doing phenomenally well. In team sports, if you're the 14th best NFL player, you're a superstar, you own the town that you live in, and you're making millions of dollars. Racing is a little bit different. Everybody loves the Drive to Survive program on Netflix with Formula One, right? The difference between the Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari and Red Bull programs and the teams that are outside of the top 10 just scratching for points, the differences are massive and the drivers are hanging on by a thread. That's what the rule makers don't want to necessarily be responsible for in this sport. Forcing riders who probably aren't going to win in the 450 class into the 450 class where they probably then won't win as expected and will be 12th to 14th place guys, and they will be scratching for jobs and might eventually be out of jobs at some point. So they don't want to be looked at as hurting their own athletes completely. So you try to put in a rule that somehow determines, let's get the really good guys out of the class. So as the rule currently stands right now, 135 points scored in 4 years and you're out of the class. But it doesn't account for riders like Craig who are very fast but also get hurt a lot and they don't end up scoring 135 points. And some teams are now smart enough to know how the rule works, so they just pull guys out of there when they get close to that 135 point mark. But what else are you supposed to do? I know it's easy to sit in the stands and say, look, this guy looks fast. He should be on a 450. You cannot put a black and white rule on paper saying if he looks fast, he's out. It's the same thing at the local track when you're like, this guy's in the B class, he should be in the A class. How do you know? Look at him. Look at how fast he is. That would be difficult. Now, there are other suggestions out here to this rule. We could just do a lifetime points thing. Maybe if you score 700 points in your career, you're out, or you're 25 years old, and you're out. Over in Europe, the MX2 class, 23 and up, you're out. That has forced riders into the 450 division, MXGP, and the racing there has been better because of it. But the MX2 class has suffered because it has less talent than it would have if you gave other riders that chance to have like an in-betweener situation. That's what you have. We know the super elite of the super elite. It's not like James Stewart or Ricky Carmichael or Ryan Villopoto or Ryan Dungey or Chad Reed were in any danger. When they moved into the premier class, they were going to be fine. But that is not a guarantee for a lot of riders. As a matter of fact, as we went into this Monster Energy AMA Supercross campaign and we put together our season preview videos on RacerX, I had my right-hand man at RacerX Online, Mitch Kendra, put together some stats. I said, Mitch, let's find out how many riders have won not one, but 2 125 or 250 Supercross titles. There have been 16 in history. How many of them have even won a single race in the 450 class? Well, the result was startling. Of the 16 two-time 125 or 250F Supercross champions, the 16 two-time champs, only 8 had won races coming into this year in the 450 class. Half didn't even win a single race, and these are legendary talents. Christophe Pourcel and Ivan Tedesco and Brian Swink, Grant Langston. They never won in the top class for various reasons, but it never happened. And then a lot of other super talents, Jeff Matasevich, Damon Huffman, for example, only won 1 race. This is what happens in the 450 class when you only get 4 or 5 or 6 winners in a given year. Success is so hard to come by. So if you're not the absolute best of the best and you get forced into that 450 class, you are in big trouble. And we've seen recent examples. Joey Savacci got a 1-year shot with Kawasaki, rode pretty well, but not enough to stay in the team. He's been floundering with injuries, trying to find himself at Rocky Mountain ATV MC KTM. It's not going well. Shane McElrath is in a very similar position with that team right now, trying to get traction, fighting through injuries, trying to make it happen. It's not going great. Were Savacci and McElrath bad riders? No, they weren't bad riders. Were they all-time elite riders? No. So what do you do with riders in that situation? Now, there was a time where they were going to be forced out of the class. The teams weighed in. They actually got a group of veterans like Savacci, Martin Davalos, a couple others, a whole nother year in the class. It used to be 3 years of 135 points and you're out. They got a 4th year based on the idea that, kind of like my last video, the bikes keep getting faster, right? Compare a 250F, it's gained 10 horsepower in the last 15 years, and then compare the current one to the 125 two-strokes, think of how much faster these bikes are. So the teams are arguing that the riders need to be a little older and more mature to really find themselves in the 250F class. Give them at least one more year before you point them out. I think the promoter and sanctioning body, they just don't want to be labeled as forcing riders into a no-win, literally, situation in the 450 class, which will inevitably lead to them being privateers who don't make a living. It's tough, man. It's a little better for the 12th place to 14th place rider than it used to be because there's forums like this, YouTube, for them to promote themselves, try to turn themselves into a brand and make money. But it's not the NFL where the 14th best guy is a millionaire and owns the city that he's in. So they tried to come up with a compromise, rules that would force the obviously really good riders out, and that has inevitably always happened through the years. The best always do move up. But at the same time, they don't want to take the Craig types who are good riders and ruin their careers and just kick them out. Send them into the 450 class when maybe they're not in the position to be on a great team and a great bike to make it work. And even with that, as good of a rider as Craig is, we don't know if it's going to work out next year because going into this year, 8 of the 16 two-time champs hadn't won races before. We've got 9 now. Chase Sexton has won 1, but look at Dylan Ferrandis. We thought that win would be inevitable in 450 Supercross, and it still hasn't happened. So that's the hard part, that fine balance. Trying to have as many riders compete in the elite level against each other as possible, but knowing that there's not a lot of parity there, there's not going to be a lot of jobs there. How can we keep the most amount of riders as employed as possible? So sometimes it's okay to let those veteran guys continue to get a paycheck in the 250 class, lest the promoter be looking like they're booting riders out of the class and booting them into the unemployment line. That is the balance that they're trying to strike. It is so difficult to come up with a perfect set of rules. You could just open it up and say there is no pointing out rule, but that's only going, like Lucas Oil Pro Motocross has that, it's only going to make it worse. This one is difficult, folks. Kind of like trying to figure out how to slow down bikes on a Supercross track. You can come up with a lot of suggestions. Every single one of them is probably going to get people mad.